And if you were just joining us, you may have noticed that the situation appears to have gotten a lot worse, a lot more serious, with 4 dead now being reported by CNN. According to law enforcement, they've spoken with and approximately 30 injured. Again, as Jennifer pointed out, we don't know if those injuries are related to gunshot wounds, but we know at least a couple of them are, according to what we've been hearing. At least 1 or 2 of those have been taken by life flight to Grady Hospital, where they are being treated. We don't know, the extent of all of the injuries, and as far as the suspect, CNN reporting that this person is of student age. We don't know if that is a student at the school, but apparently a young person, according to CNN, is the suspect that they have in custody.
And again, there are so many questions left unanswered at this hour. We did hear from the sheriff not too long ago, but as this investigation is unfolding, we did not get many answers. The sheriff not taking questions at that point. We do expect to hear from the sheriff later on this afternoon, possibly around 4 o'clock, and hopefully at that point we can get some more information, some more details about what unfolded here, who is among those who are dead and injured, and what we know so far about the suspect who the sheriff's office says is now in custody. Jonathan, we were talking about the injuries and how it's hard to know without concrete information what those injuries include, but we know that right now there's going to be a lot of mental health situations that need to be addressed as well with these students dealing with such a thing happening in their early lives, and seeing this happen to possibly other students, teachers, and staff members at this school, people that they know and potentially saw every day. This is going to take a lot of work and support for this entire community to move forward.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Jennifer, students prepare for things like this these days. Unfortunately, it is part of going to middle school, high school, even as Cheryl pointed out, sometimes earlier, even in elementary and even preschool, you prepare for these types of drills, but you hope that you never have to actually live this out. You ever have to be in these situations. And so for many of these students, we saw them living this out today, running from gunfire, hearing gunfire, and this is what we saw unfold today at this school for these 1,900 students in the middle of what everyone described who witnessed it as a chaotic scene.
Yeah, and this story having far-reaching effects beyond just this Barrow County community, beyond just Metro Atlanta, beyond the state of Georgia. We have heard that President Joe Biden has been briefed on the situation, and we're hearing now from U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland. Let's listen to some of what he had to say.
But before we begin, I want to address the tragic shooting that occurred this morning at a high school in Winder, Georgia. We are still gathering information, but the FBI and ATF are on the scene, working with state, local, and federal partners. I'm devastated for the families who have been affected by this terrible tragedy. The Justice Department stands ready to provide any resources or support that the Winder community needs in the days ahead.
And that was U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland offering some remarks following this deadly shooting at Apalachee High School. Again, this information coming from CNN at this hour that 4 people have been killed or 4 people are dead, and that about 30 have been injured as a result of whatever unfolded out here at Apalachee High School. We have heard from Grady Hospital earlier, at least, that 1 person was being treated there with a gunshot wound. But again, we have not received many details from the sheriff's office regarding exactly what happened and how.
Yeah, and if there is any positive news at this hour, it is that the suspect is now in custody, and police have said, and they have reiterated, that the situation is now contained. We do know still a number of schools in the area, including the elementary school and middle school, are on lockdown at last check. We are awaiting an update from police. They did say, at least the sheriff said, that they would be working to get those schools off lockdown and those parents allowed to come pick up their students. We are expecting another update, an official update from the sheriff around 4 o'clock this afternoon. But as of last check, there are still a number of schools on lockdown as they continue investigating and continue to have this large police presence around the high school there.
So as this investigation is in very early stages for law enforcement out there in Barrow County, we also know that a big undertaking underway right now is reuniting parents and students. And as Jonathan just mentioned, this isn't just at Apalachee High School. This is at other surrounding schools in Barrow County as well, also placed on lockdown. Parents working to get to those students as well at this hour. And so that is something that we are working to get more details on. As soon as we have more information, we'll of course continue to pass that information along to you. Any updates about this process that we learn, we will be sharing with you guys on air and online. You can also find more details always as we are continuing to follow this on our website, 11alive.com, and inside our 11 Alive News app, because this is an ongoing situation and we're continuing to get new information in moment by moment.
That's right, and we expect again more information to come shortly. You're looking right now at some video that we shot earlier, and you can really just see the large, incredible police presence that was there. As I mentioned earlier, we started to see more and more law enforcement, more and more medical staff, ambulances, even some medical helicopters showing up on the scene, giving us a sense of just how serious the situation was. And as we have learned within the last 20 minutes or so, it appears the number of those who have died and the number of those injured has gone up significantly from just what we knew earlier this morning.
And you talked about that medical helicopter. We even saw one live when Molly was reporting just a short time ago, still arriving out there at Apalachee High School. And so this is a situation that, while police say is contained, it is still ongoing, still taking place. We know law enforcement are still out there on the ground going through this situation and this investigation piece by piece, because this is something that everyone in that community will no doubt want to be done precisely. You don't want any mistakes, and so we know that they will be going through this high school and whatever other outside and surrounding information they need to, with meticulous care, to make sure that this situation is something that they can answer questions for so many families really wondering why and what happened and what can be done to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
And a lot of those answers will of course come from students in terms of what happened, where it happened, and perhaps even why, if there was some sort of a fight or motive or something that may have led to the gunfire today. We did hear from our Molly Oak, according to a neighbor of one of those students that she spoke to, who was in the 10th grade hallway, at least in one of the classrooms along that hallway, who heard the gunfire, and that person, that student, is now being interviewed by the GBI, perhaps the closest eyes and ears to what unfolded today.
And that is a process that is still ongoing. We've talked about some of the reunification that has been going on out there on campus with family and students. But again, we are hearing from some parents and family members and loved ones out there on the ground that some of these students are indeed being held back in order to speak with law enforcement investigators, including members from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, to share their accounts of what they saw and what they heard today as this situation unfolded at Apalachee High School. So that is just one piece of the investigation that will help law enforcement as they move forward.
Again, just to reiterate, if you are joining us within a short time ago, we are looking at this scene from Apalachee High School in Barrow County, which is a school right here, this high school of about 1,900 students, about an hour or so outside of Atlanta. But as I mentioned, you have seen law enforcement come from all over, really not just Atlanta area, but beyond, law enforcement and state officials. As the governor mentioned earlier, he is directing all necessary and available state resources to the school to respond, especially considering how serious of a situation we know this has grown to be. So you no doubt are seeing a lot of law enforcement there from all across our state.
And Jonathan, you mentioned that this is about an hour or so away from Atlanta, yet and still we are learning that Atlanta Public Schools are adding extra security, doing extra work to make sure that their families have a little bit of peace of mind as this situation unfolds in our metro Atlanta community. And so that's something that we are likely seeing across the state as this unfolds. And we know so many things that happen to one of us happen to all of us. And so we are certain that these other school districts are keeping Barrow County schools in their thoughts and prayers and reaching out to assist in whatever manners they can as well with this process that's going to be ongoing for the district handling this situation in the days, weeks, and months ahead.
And when you hear about these types of calls, and we do often sometimes in our business, and you all do as viewers, you hear about active shooters, you hear about lockdowns, and you just hope and you pray that this is not the case. Unfortunately, today when we heard from law enforcement after they got to the school around 10 o'clock this morning, they realized this was a very serious situation. This was an active shooter, and as we're learning within the last 30 minutes or so, this was perhaps bigger and more dire of a situation than any of us thought just looking at this earlier.
And I think from the coverage that we had earlier in the afternoon or earlier in the morning, I think there were signals that this could potentially be even worse than people would hope or imagine, just by the sheer volume of law enforcement response that we saw out there on the ground. And when you hear the words hard lockdown, we hear different levels of lockdowns with schools, whether it is police activity nearby. Schools may go on lockdown just for safety, but when you hear a hard lockdown, that is something that automatically triggers something in you, that you know this is a very serious situation. Earlier in the day, NBC News reported that 2 people were dead and 4 injured. But again, now at this hour, CNN News is reporting 4 dead and about 30 injured. So this information is continuing to develop and update. We did hear from the sheriff not too long ago. The sheriff keeping a lot of information close to the vest at this point, not sharing many details, including information about those who may have died and those who were injured. Again, we are hoping and expecting to hear from the sheriff once again, maybe around 4 o'clock. And he said that he hopes that he may be able to share more concrete information at that point.